You know, history is always growing and changing. We study history, we try to be as objective, we try to find the facts as we know them, but we're always getting new information. So we're always having to reassess our perspective and bring that new information into the present. So recently, I received some photos from Craig Andrews, a subscriber to our newsletter. In this, we had a photo of the Arizona Highways April 1973 edition. Now, in there was some text and there was a photo of some jewelry showing some beautiful Preston Monongahela jewelry featuring what they were saying was the new turquoise that had recently been found. Let me read from that. Saks Fifth Avenue, Phoenix introduces for the first time in micro color the new Landers Blue Spiderweb Turquoise, America's newest gemstone. Was discovered by Ouija board indication in an area previously explored. The Landers Blue on silver reproduced on the opposite page represents the creative genius of Indian artist Preston Monongahela, who is currently designing an exclusive collector series for Saks Fifth Avenue, Phoenix. So that was new information for me because while I was very aware of the series of Arizona Highways editions featuring turquoise, I wasn't aware of this one because it didn't have any turquoise on the cover. So I want to read a little bit from Turquoise in America Part 2 so we can get an idea about the beginning of the turquoise boom in the 70s. Although it is challenging to pick a date for the beginning of the 70s boom, we knew turquoise has only one commercial application, jewelry. Sometime during the second half of 1971, Saks Fifth Avenue in Phoenix presented a fashion show featuring Native American jewelry. So from that, this trend began because in June 1972 issue of Arizona Highways, it featured an article by Preston Monongahela titled "The New Indian Jewelry of the Southwest." It was a manifesto of a new art form. He explained, quote, "When you are buying this jewelry, remember that the method is old, but the jewelry is new. I feel it is art, true art. As Indianism extends deeper into the art world, the new Indian jewelry of the Southwest will be accepted as a distinguished art form." So Preston had a lot of insight as to what was happening in terms of the culture and the acceptance of Indian art and jewelry. Subsequent issues in January and August of 1974 continued to promote Native American jewelry featuring some of the finest turquoise ever mined. In the January 1974 issue, David L. Newman, a noted turquoise expert, said, "Today, for the first time in many years, turquoise is again in vogue. The Christmas season of 1972 for the first time witnessed newspaper advertising from New York, Saks Fifth Avenue, through Chicago, Marshall Field, to Los Angeles, May Company, of turquoise set in Indian-made jewelry." So this was really the start of this boom, and I encourage you to read the rest of this story in Turquoise in America Part 2. You know, as a historian, I research, go back to find the facts and connect them into a narrative, into a story. But sometimes we can only get the dots as close as we can, then we need to make some reasonable speculation as to how we can connect them. So with Lander Blue, let's see what facts we know. First, we know Lander Blue was located on March 19th, 1973 by Rita Hapgood, who was working then as a blackjack dealer at the Nevada casino owned by Hank Dorian. We also know that she deeded to Marvin Sim and Hank Dorian the Mary Louise, which was the named claim of the Turquoise that was sold as Lander Blue. And that was on October 1st, 1973. Now, I had assumed that she had not really mined that turquoise, and that it was not until Hank Dorian came in, the money man, who bought the claim for $10,000, which at that time was quite a bit of money. And then he hired Bobby Johnson, who was married to Dixie Edgar, who was part of the Edgar family. And that turquoise was all cut by Joe Edgar, Dixie's brother, and his cousin, Bucky Edgar. So it was a real family affair there. Now, we also know with this new factual information, this new dot, that there was Lander Blue in jewelry in April of 1973 in that edition of Arizona Highways. So now the question comes, was Rita mining that turquoise, and who did she sell it to so that Preston could have it to make that jewelry? So I had to do what historians do. You have to go to your sources and try to get some corroboration, get some more information. So first call was to Rex Edgar, because he's one of my last contacts available from the Edgar family who remember that time. And he was discharged from the Army in August of 1973. And he says when he got home, there was no talk of Lander Blue. We have to remember at that time in Battle Mountain, people were into different turquoise mines all the time. They were coming up, they're going, you'd go, you'd work a claim. When it played out, you'd go on to another one. And Lander Blue was no different than any other number of claims at that time. In fact, Rex said that the big claim at that time was Stormy Mountain, which was being mined by his uncle, Cutler Edgar. Well, we don't hear too much about Stormy Mountain now. We sure remember Lander Blue. So then I called Bob Bruscia, and he had bought some of the original stones that Rita had found there at Lander Blue. And he remembered that, yes, that's how she got them. They had gone up there, probably her father, her sister, who was married to Rex Edgar's brother, Rick. Again, whole family affair, were up there, and they were mining turquoise. Of course, you locate a claim, you're not going to sit back and do nothing. You've got this beautiful turquoise. You're going to go out there and try to find it. Well, certainly appears that between March and October, when she deeded to Marvin and Hank, she did find turquoise, and that in fact this was when the turquoise was taken to Gallup, because I contacted Joe Tanner of Tanner's Indian Arts, and he remembered looking at about 6 to 8 pounds in 1973, and he high graded that. He picked out the best stones that he wanted. Now, we also know at that time that Preston was his lead jeweler working for him, and that Joe, who had his hands in a lot of different pies at that time, was also working with Saks Fifth Avenue. So now we've really gotten those dots close enough that we can really make a reasonable assumption that it's more likely than not that this was in fact how this Lander Blue, at that time known as Landers Blue, was able to get into this beautiful jewelry made by Preston Monangi. So I hope this new information in the history of turquoise has been of as much interest to you as it has been